Hello horror fans, it's me again, your horrific host Jack Finch. Once again, welcome back to Top 5 Scary Videos, the most terrifying channel on YouTube, where all your nightmares are condensed into one easy, charming video. Today we're going to be taking a look at those relatively innocent tales that can quickly turn into a slumber party's worst nightmare in 5 scary sleepover horror stories that turned out to be true. You all know that feeling. As a kid, there was something slightly magical with staying at a friend's house or camping out in the yard under the stars. But then you'd hear something a little bit out of place, a bump in the basement or a strange scrape on the wall, a snap of a twig out in the distance. Seemingly innocent events, your parents would just tell you it's the house adjusting or old piping in the walls. But you could never shake that feeling that something or someone was out there. Well, at number 5 we have the story of the gas man. Reddit user Ligamentary tells a tale from the 1960s where her and her older sister were home alone for the weekend. It was a different time where people were generally less security conscious. She was waiting for a friend to pick her up when there was a slight knock on the door. Thinking that it was her friend, she answered without checking the peephole. It was a man standing there claiming that he was the gas man and he needed to check their meter. Disappointed that it wasn't her friend, she allowed the man in. She didn't notice this at the time, but the man wasn't dressed as a city official would, but he had a green and purple striped shirt on, like the host of Blue's Clues. Immediately, the man headed upstairs to the girls' bedrooms, just as her older sister passed him on the landing. "Why is that man going upstairs?" her sister asked. She replied that he was just reading the gas meters. Her sister turned pale. "Our gas meters are outside." Ever resourceful, her old sister had a stroke of genius and a man was passing outside the house when she yelled, "Oh Dad, it's good that you're home. There's a man here to read the gas meters upstairs." Just like that, the man in the striped shirt bolted out of the house. Close call? Well, you bet, because just 3 months later, a girl went missing under the exact same circumstances. She was home alone with no signs of forced entry. They later found the girl's body. She'd been held captive for a few days and then burned alive. Coming in at number 4, The Drums of War Woman Dal. Now, this one is a little short but sweet and completely terrifying if you have a morbid fear of the unknown. Reddit user Cough Cakes, great name, shared this unnerving tale to strike fear into the heart of campers everywhere. It was the year 2000 and he had spent a year at Aspen Youth Alternatives, a wilderness survival camp that taught young people the importance of independent survival and self-reliance. During one of their more remote hikes, they ventured off trail and made camp near a place called War Woman Dal. It was a beautiful location, but many of the campers said it just felt a little bit off. There was a strange silence in the air that didn't quite make sense, and an absence of something that they couldn't quite put their finger on. There were 15 campers sleeping in groups of 3 and 2 staff members that took turns on a night shift, keeping up an eye in the woods. Gradually, he started to hear a faint rhythm in the distance, slowly getting louder and louder. Thinking that it was all in his head, he asked the girl next to him if she could hear it too. At first she said no, but then it got louder and closer and she could definitely hear the drums. Thinking it was the kids, a staff member hollered at them to knock it off. It was time to get to sleep, but the drums just kept getting louder. By this time, the whole group were out of their tents, looking at each other, staring off in bewilderment. A few of the campers were stood still, tears streaming down their faces. The drums lasted until daybreak. Needless to say, the group quickly left the trail. Smart move, thankfully. Next up at number 3, Not My Boyfriend. Now, this one creeped me out a little bit, so let's hope we never run into this person. Reddit user HeartX3 Jess lived with her boyfriend in their swanky downtown apartment. She worked from home and her boyfriend was a teacher in a town about 15 minutes away by train. He got home pretty much the exact same time every single day. Pay attention to that detail because it's important. Well, Jess and her boyfriend had been in a pretty big fight. The kind of fight where you don't even speak to each other, call or text. At this particular juncture, Jess was lying on her bed, roughly the time that her boyfriend was due home, and she was ready to make amends. She was preparing herself for that awkward, "Hey, shall we stop fighting" kind of smile. She had earplugs in, but she could hear his heavy footsteps walking around the apartment, waiting for him to finally head to the bedroom. The door opened slowly, just a few inches. She turned her head towards the door, but it stayed still this time. Jess could see a reflection on the doorknob. It wasn't her boyfriend's hand, but a woman's hand with dark red nail polish. Whoever it was, they slowly closed the door just as they had opened it. As you would, she freaked out and hid on the balcony as she frantically called her boyfriend. Was it his mum or sister who came to visit? No, they didn't have keys. The landlady? No, she always lets them know a day in advance. Nevertheless, her boyfriend said, "Don't move, I'm calling the police." The mystery remained unsolved, not a person in sight, but the next day, when the landlady was changing the locks, they found a strange, square area by the keyhole that had been scratched away by something. Tools. Someone had forced their way inside. Spooky, eh? Coming in at number 2, Gilbert, Arizona. This one is definitely a doozy, so strap on in. It's the late 90s and Reddit user Can610, who was 14 at the time, moved from Phoenix to Gilbert, Arizona, which at the time was just beginning to develop from a town into a bigger city. Previously, most of the land around Gilbert had been rich, well-used farmland, and it had a long line of rural history. Now, Can610 was the oldest of 7 kids, and although their house was always bustling with noise and activity, the family quickly noticed that there were a number of strange noises that would occur. The house was brand new, mind, and the land around it nothing but cornfields. One night she was having some friends over for a slumber party. As is custom at these kind of events, the talk quickly turned to ghost stories. The Hookman, rat-a-tat. They laughed at how lame they were until they heard a strange shuffling outside their room. Someone dared her to take a look. Who knows, perhaps maybe it's a ghost. So feeling brave, she did and quietly crept down the hallway. As she got to the end of the house, she noticed that the back door was actually wide open. Strange, everyone in the house was asleep. Stranger still, someone had tracked mud all over the floor. The footsteps didn't seem to move in a straight line either. They had a strange property about them. It was a thick, consistent layer of mud, almost too perfect to be an actual footprint. She screamed and the slumber party ran down the hallway to her. As they huddled together, they all saw the exact same thing. Standing just beside the TV was a small boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old. He wore nothing but plain denim overalls and was filthy, covered in mud. For a moment he looked at the girls with a sad, somber look, and then just like that, he was gone. The next morning, the mud had completely disappeared except for 2 dirty footprints by the back door and a dried mud mark on the outside doorknob. Maybe he left, or maybe he was always there. And finally, at our number 1 spot, Goatman while camping. Now, if you are aware of the legend of the Anansi Goatman, then you'll easily be able to fill in some of these gaps in this story because there's a lot left to the imagination. It's 2007, and Reddit user Coyotes was out with a couple of friends camping in the woods. 13 of them. Kids between the ages of 16 and 18 just wanted to have a few beers at the weekend in relative peace and feel like adults. They'd planned to stay for 4 to 5 days over the summer vacation, but little did they know what would transpire. On the first night around 7 PM, they heard something or someone moving in the bushes. They threw an empty beer bottle, heard it smashed, and slowly watched something or someone climb out of the bushes and lumber back into the trees. That'd be the first warning for me to get out. Later that night, as they slept in their tents, they heard a strange popping sound coming from the fire. They shot up out of bed to find the fire that was previously just dying coals, roaring with flames as if someone had poured gasoline on it. Well, obviously no one had. It was then that they began to smell a scent like no other. At first they thought it was a skunk, but then they realized it was more like the smell of rotten meat. Then they heard a soft voice coming from the line of trees. The group stopped. One of them, named Ben, cried out, "Oi, who's there?" Silence. And then, in a similar but eerily not quite right imitation, the sound of a reply. "Oi, who's there?" And then a figure emerged, maybe 40 or so feet away. "Oi, who's there?" it said again. The group stood transfixed. It was only then that they noticed the figure looked eerily familiar. It was the double of their friend Ben that had shouted out into the woods, in every likeness, except that it wasn't him. It stared at them for what seemed like hours, even as they hurriedly packed away their camp into their cars. Every now and then, it would cry, "Oi, who's there?" Spooky, eh? Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today, horror fans. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed these terrifying tales. If you have, feel free to hit that thumbs up and share this top 5 list with your nearest and dearest. As per usual, I've been your host, Jack Finch. You've been watching Top 5 Scary Videos, and until next time, you take it easy.